That's my cat Lulu. She's perfectly healthy, but I'm not waiting for issues to pop up. I'm feeding her new Purina One whole body support, proactive nutrition supporting her 5 key systems. It's Purina One's most advanced formula, helping us stay ahead at mealtime so we can stay ahead for a lifetime.
Purina One, a difference from day one. Try new Purina One whole body support. Just say, Alexa, add to cart.
Alexa, add to cart.
When you manage procurement for multiple facilities, every order matters. But when it's for a hospital system, they matter even more. Grainger gets it and knows there's no time for managing multiple suppliers and no room for shipping delays. That's why Grainger offers millions of products in fast, dependable delivery, so you can keep your facility stocked, safe, and running smoothly. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hi, this is Kevin. As we all know, back last year, Andrew Baldwin was part of a defense team that lost very badly to Nicholas McLeland in the trial of Richard Allen. What we didn't know, and which we now exclusively report, is that in August of this year, Andrew Baldwin filed a 57-page complaint against Nicholas McLeland with the disciplinary committee here in Indiana. He lost badly there as well. We're going to talk about all that. And in these episodes, we'll also talk for the first time about some complaints that were filed against me, complaints that also lost badly.
Content warning, this episode contains discussion of the murder of 2 girls as well as suicide. On February 13, 2017, a man named Richard Allen murdered 2 girls, 14-year-old Liberty German and 13-year-old Abigail Williams, and that occurred in Delphi, Indiana, which is in Carroll County. Allen was arrested in 2022 and then was prosecuted by Carroll County elected prosecutor Nicholas McLeland. Allen's defense team had lead counsel Brad Rozzi, as well as Jennifer Auger and Andrew Baldwin. But anyways, they did a very bad job at trial, and also Allen was pretty clearly guilty. He was convicted on November 11th, 2024 by a jury of his peers. Now at this point, we can exclusively report that Baldwin filed a ridiculous complaint against McLeland this past summer with Indiana's Disciplinary Commission, a body tasked with disciplinary complaints against attorneys. And this was not an isolated incident. Kevin also had groundless complaints filed on him over the Delphi case. This appears to be part of a larger strategy or tactic by Richard Allen truthers to attempt to punish their perceived enemies using frivolous complaints. And it underscores the fact that even though they lost in court, these people are still attempting to extract revenge long after the verdict came down. My name is Anya Kane. I'm a journalist.
And I'm Kevin Greenlee. I'm an attorney.
And this is The Murder Sheet.
We're a true crime podcast focused on original reporting, interviews, and deep dives into murder cases.
We're The Murder Sheet.
And this is The Delphi Murders, Baldwin's Complaint, Part 1. Anya, before we get to discussing the complaint itself, which is a monumental and ridiculous task, let's start at the beginning. Nicholas McLeland was actually sent a letter from the executive director of the Disciplinary Commission. Can you read that letter?
Yes. On August 20th, 2025, Andrew Joseph Baldwin filed a grievance against you. The complaint was considered by this office and has been dismissed as not raising a substantial question of misconduct under the Indiana Rules of Professional Conduct that would warrant disciplinary action. As this grievance was dismissed for not raising a substantial question of misconduct, it does not require any formal response from you. A copy of this grievance is enclosed for your information. The commission file on this matter is now closed. Sincerely, Adrian L. Meering, Executive Director.
There's a couple of things we should talk about in regards to that letter. Absolutely, the number one most important thing is they're saying this complaint he filed, there's nothing to it. You don't even have to answer the charges. We just look at it and say, no, this is garbage, and they toss it aside. So that, I think, is the most important thing, is this responsible body whose entire job is to regulate questions like this and discipline attorneys who make mistakes. They think that what Baldwin has given him is on its face insufficient and not even deserving of a response from McLeland. I think that's the most important part about that.
Yeah, but you could have saved Baldwin could have saved some steps by just depositing it directly into the basket, right? I mean, like, it's just like they didn't say, okay, well, we need to have some hearings to see the facts and, figure out what's going on here. It didn't even rise to that level.
So flimsy, doesn't even need a response. I think it's also interesting they say he filed this on August 20th, 2025. Anya, just is a refresher so we can put ourselves back, because we're sitting here in early December. Summer seems a very long time ago. What was going on in August 2025?
So the commission, Disciplinary Commission, they received the letter on August 20th. It's dated August 19th. A week after August 19th, as some of you may remember, our book, Shadow of the Bridge, The Delphi Murders and the Dark Side of the American Heartland, came out. So that's one data point there. In addition, on August 5th, 2025, a Hulu documentary came out that was incredibly sympathetic to Andrew Baldwin specifically and the defense team as a whole. And it also featured extensive footage shot by Baldwin himself of himself working on the case and saying little catchphrases as he files motions. And
either he or his team were filming themselves on phones doing things that they thought were like very dramatic. Like when he was about to file the Franks memorandum and he's pushing a button. He says, "This is for Richard Allen." He pushes the button dramatically.
Yeah.
I remember that.
I remember cringing and just, it was bad. So that was something that came out. And that docuseries, it kind of came and went pretty quickly in my memory. Like, people were like, oh, wow, for a day. I know that Anna Williams slammed it on stage at CrimeCon.
That's Abby Williams' mother.
Yes. And it's not very good. It's not very accurate, in my opinion. But more so, it seemed to be kind of Baldwin's big vehicle for whatever he wanted to do when he was filming himself work on this case. Seems to have, that was the fruit of his labors. Came and went. 2 days later, on Facebook, on August 7th, the CrimeCon's Clue Awards are announced. And they're going to not only the families of both girls, Libby and Abby, but also Lieutenant Jerry Holman of the Indiana State Police and Nicholas McLeland, the Carroll County prosecutor who beat Baldwin. So August seems to have been a month that maybe, shall we say, triggered Baldwin somewhat. I mean, he's like, right, his documentary comes out, doesn't really make that much of an impact. Then you have McLeland getting an award, and then you have our book about to come out. Now, we approached Baldwin many times attempting to get his side of the story for our book. It was not through lack of our effort that he did not participate in that, but he did not.
And as we've said before, during the trial and the pretrial process, he often gave personal assurances that he would speak with us after the trial, and those personal assurances were not lived up to.
In addition, he also went on the record telling people that he was only going to talk to outlets that would, quote unquote, baby him. So I guess we didn't count. We were not in the baby group, I guess, of treating him like an infant. So we were not part of this. But so anyways, I note all these data points because it just seems like August, he was having a month in August.
Okay. So with that said, we are going to talk about what he wrote in his complaint. And I just ask that you all keep in mind as we discuss this, that, again, it was so flimsy, it was so meritless that it didn't even warrant a response. And so keep that framing in mind as we talk about that. And I'm also going to say we're only going to be reading excerpts from this. And the primary reason for that is this thing is 57 pages long. And it is incredibly repetitive. And when I say incredibly repetitive, I actually mean that in two different ways. It is repetitive in the sense that everything that is covered in there, everything that is covered in this complaint has been covered extensively in pretrial motions that Baldwin tried and lost, or in post-conviction motions that he tried to do and lost. So it's all stuff we've heard before. And also it's repetitive in terms that the complaint itself, he repeats things from one page to another. It is incredibly repetitive. And it to a shocking extent. And comes from somebody, I read a lot of this man's writings over the years.
Yeah, this was a not in the top tier effort here. It was surprising. I think you said it best about how it sounds.
I want to read a line from it. Quote, "It has taken me several months to draft and finish this complaint. As you will see, it is lengthy." End quote. And I don't mean to be unkind. This does not read like a document that he spent months slaving over. This reads, as I think you will see, like a transcription of an overnight session where you're ranting with a YouTuber.
Yeah, it was shocking.
To get back to the document, he writes, quote, "I apologize for the length of this document. I wish that I did not have to provide the level of detail I am providing. I am a very busy lawyer, and the amount of time taken to prepare this has taken time away from other pursuits and family time." End quote. So he took time away from his family to write this thing. And just like his representation of Richard Allen, it accomplished nothing.
Yeah, I want to say something because I think sometimes people are impressed with the wrong things when they're looking at documents like this, especially from, attorneys. People tend to, no offense, Kevin, give attorneys too much of the benefit of the doubt in various situations I've found. But I think there's a sense of like, whoa, it's 57 pages. He must make a pretty good case. There's a lot in there. It's pretty stuffed. And I just want to note with the repetition and with the padding out and with the extraneous details and with how badly this is organized, he himself actually kind of seemingly almost in a braggadocious manner mentions the length of the document a few times. And again, I think he's trying to almost awe people for 57 pages of complaints. Wow. Content is what counts, right? The content, not the length of the document, what's in the document. So I guess I would just caution that. We only say that because he references the length of the thing a bunch of times. And it's like, it's bizarrely performative.
And this may not apply to you, Anya, because you were always a fine student. But I had the experience, and maybe some of the listeners have had experiences where you get assigned to write like a report that's supposed to be like 10 pages. And you don't really have 10 pages worth of things to say, so you start padding it and you're repeating yourself and things like that.
Quoting the dictionary.
And this reads like that to me.
Oh, it doesn't. It reads, honestly, it doesn't read like an essay so much as it reads like someone just rambling. Like if he cornered you at the bar and started unloading on you about all his grievances against McLeland, it feels like you'd have a similar experience to us reading this document. And that's not a good thing. But in a nutshell, let's break down what
boil it down.
Yeah, let's break down what is he specifically accusing McLeland of, and what reading this document, going through this, seeing what he's actually bringing up. Baldwin is saying that McLeland withheld crucial evidence from him and the Richard Allen defense team. That is the nutshell. He's hiding evidence. He's lying about it. That is what Baldwin is saying happened here. And I guess that prompts a kind of a question or something that I think maybe, Kevin, you should address, being the resident attorney here. Over, what are a prosecutor's duties as far as discovery? What is exculpatory evidence? What is all of that? And how do prosecutors sort of need to maneuver that as they're dealing with a case?
You need to turn over any exculpatory evidence. This is evidence which points to the crime being committed by someone other than the defendant.
So, for instance, let's use this because I have Stockholm Syndrome now about this subject. Let's use the cereal theft example. So, if I'm on trial for stealing cereal from our local Walmart, and then there's evidence that, a person's car is seen in the parking lot of the Walmart, and that person was posting pictures of bowls of cereal that match the same type stolen, and maybe they have a criminal record around stealing cereal, that's exculpatory because, hey, maybe it's not me. Maybe I'm just getting blamed for everything. And if the prosecutor withheld that from my defense team, that would be a pretty egregious situation, and the case could get dismissed over that.
As we will hear, Baldwin has a very broad definition of exculpatory. He also has a very bizarre definition of turning stuff over, because if McLeland would turn stuff over, it doesn't really count in his mind unless it's like properly indexed and tabbed so he could find it all very, very easily.
Basically, McLeland has to sit with Baldwin holding his hand and doing a presentation for him about where everything is, seemingly as far as he's concerned, which is very much not McLeland's job, and bizarre that Baldwin would expect that. But anyways.
Save money. Look better. Shop our sponsor Quince today and refresh your wardrobe with some new styles for spring.
Quince is our favorite clothing brand. They are all about getting you luxury styles at affordable prices. No markups, no middlemen, just high-value, high-quality fashion pieces that will transform your look.
They've got everything. Organic cotton and Mongolian cashmere sweaters, breathable linen, soft Pima cotton that looks great and doesn't pill, washable silk pieces. I mean, Quince is a go-to for me at this point. I love their work shirts and sweaters, and I can't wait to try out some of their new pieces for spring.
Same here. I'm really looking to try out their linen pieces as the temperatures turn warmer. But since it's still pretty chilly out, I'm relying on my Quince Mongolian cashmere sweaters to weather the changing seasons. I'm regularly wearing all of them, and they've held up so great despite my constant use. These things are great.
A wardrobe refresh does not need to break your budget. All you need is a few quality pieces that pair well and hold up. Pieces that don't go out of style. Quince has got you there. Check out their website today because Murder Sheet listeners will get a great deal.
Right now, go to quince.com/msheet for free shipping and 365-day returns. That's a full year to build your wardrobe and love it. And you will. Now available in Canada, too. Don't keep settling for clothes that don't last. Go to quince.com/msheet for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/msheet. When we started the Murder Sheet, we didn't really know if podcasting was even going to work out for us in the long run. Like, what if no one listens to us? That would be awkward. I'm really glad we tuned out those doubts and went for it, because it's been an absolute dream come true. But the kind of uncertainty we face is what stops people from betting on themselves, chasing their dreams, and starting their own businesses.
For all of you out there looking to kickstart your own dreams, partnering with Shopify is one of the best decisions you can make. It gets you on the right track from day one. They take the uncertainty out of business.
Shopify is your one-stop commerce platform that supports millions of businesses around the world.
Shopify makes you efficient and fast. You can upload new products, improve existing products. Shopify's AI tools can help you with product descriptions, page headlines, and better product photography.
And don't worry about nobody buying your products. They help you get the word out. Shopify puts the power of a whole marketing team behind you. You can create email and social media campaigns with just a few clicks.
Shopify supports you with inventory management, international shipping, processing returns, and more. Whatever the challenge, they're there to make things quicker and more convenient. It's time to turn those what-ifs into with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/msheet. Go to shopify.com/msheet. That's shopify.com/msheet.
You know what they say. Early bird gets the ultimate vacation home. Book early and save over $120 with Vrbo. Because early gets you closer to the action. Whether it's waves lapping at the shore or snoozing in a hammock that overlooks, well, whatever you want it to. So you can all enjoy the payoff come summer with Vrbo's early booking deals. Rise and shine. Average savings $141. Select homes only.
So this document gets started with, for some reason, a summary of Baldwin's discredited theory that Odinist cult members murdered the girls. So yes, we're starting there. Immediately, I just want to say he got a bunch of stuff wrong. And frankly, I think he misled in this, summary even, which was like, but he's relitigating it, so I think it's worth noting.
Go into it. Lay it all out.
So this is what he wrote. Quote, immediately after the victims were found, law enforcement started investigating whether the murderers were members of a cult or religion who had left certain symbols at the crime scene that resembled something called runes formed from sticks and blood, end quote. So, okay, police looked at the possibility of a variety of things. Police in this case were dealing with thousands upon thousands of leads. They were going every which way. They were looking at different possible suspects, different possible theories of what happened. They interviewed the family members of the girls in the early hours of this happening. So, like, everything was on the table. To say that police were kind of focused on this, or to suggest that, as he does here, is inaccurate. It's just not correct. I will also note, before we get rolling on Odinism again, these stick formations, as the defense kind of claims, they were shown to a professor, as we'll get into later, and they were also shown to members of the Behavioral Analysis Unit of the United States Marshal Service. No one thought these were runes. No one looked at this and said, yes, those are runes. The opposite. What the BAU of the Marshal Service said was, it looks like someone's trying to essentially hide the bodies. And if you look at where the sticks are put, it makes it pretty clear that they're essentially, like Richard Allen says in his confession, hey, there's a van on this access road. It looks like someone's trying to hide the bodies from the perspective of someone on the opposite side of the creek. They're not very well hid when you're just on top of them, but when we're talking about being across the creek, that's where he saw movement and activity. So he's trying to shield the bodies from eyes on that side of the creek. It's pretty simple. No, if I just throw a bunch of sticks down in my front yard, and they're just in some random scattering formation, you might see a V, you might even see a W. But if you're not able to spell anything, then it probably doesn't mean anything. Runes are letters. Yeah. It's not like they're either letters or they're not. Like, there's no, I don't know how.
Calm down, honey. We get it.
So, okay, anyway. Also the blood, okay, so this was another quote. Quote, also the blood of one of the victims appeared to form another rune on a tree, as if someone had painted the tree in her blood to form a rune, end quote. Okay, so there was a transfer stain on one of the trees. The defense had every opportunity to call a crime scene analyst expert to say, hey, we think this was painted on. There's plenty of experts who you can find, and they can analyze it, and they can tell you, yeah, I think it was painted on, versus I think it was just a transfer stain in the sense that someone had blood on their palm and pressed it against the tree. They can analyze that. They had the money, they had the time, they had the opportunity to call their own expert. They did not. Instead, all we got was crime scene analyst and expert Major Pat Cicero of the LaPorte County Sheriff's Office, who is a widely respected crime scene analyst. He testified that the blood at the scene was a transfer stain that matched the hand of victim Liberty German. So this was a child who was dying, who is resting against the tree as she's going through this horrible experience. I mean, it's a horrifying image. What he also testified to was, because the defense put out their stupid theory, he was able to actually try painting that shape with blood on that kind of tree. And what he found was it would have taken forever to do that, first of all. He would have had to been going back and forth between the blood source, aka the bodies, and the tree. There was no dripping to indicate that was happening. And it would take an inordinate amount of time, and it was very difficult to do. So it's a situation of what is likely, and where's the drippings if what they're saying is true, and why couldn't they find an expert to testify for them? Because obviously it's not true. So those are two things. And in addition, the defense contends throughout this document and throughout the trial and the case and everything, the whole process, Baldwin and the defense as a whole has contended that law enforcement simultaneously was really super duper interested in the Odinism angle, and they were running with that in the early days, and that was all they were doing. It was the only important thing, but also they were trying to cover it up. Which is it? You know, like was it like the detectives were like, okay, it's Odinism. Oh wait, no, we have to cover it up. Like why? Like why? What happened was that law enforcement was looking at everything as they should, and they weren't like closing anything down. They were like, okay, let's see if someone thinks that these sticks form something. Good. And then what they were told was they don't. So then they move on. That's how it works. Like they don't just like. Anyways, none of this is important because none of the Odinism angle went anywhere with the investigation. The people involved who were kind of put forward by tipsters had alibis or were never linked to Delphi that day or the crime scene in any way. So it's like there's a lead to look at, to run down. They did, and that's it. And that's how it works. You know, Baldwin himself doesn't even seem to really fully grasp. I mean, he keeps using this term Odinism, as we've described. The term is Norse paganism. Odinism is a specific kind of criminal gang. He doesn't even know what he's talking about. And like, honestly, I think he's just sticking with Odinism for branding reasons because that's what got, play in the media. But it's not accurate. Saying people are Odinists, that's a very specific group within Norse paganism. There's no evidence to me that any of the people they're even talking about are actually Odinists. I think they may worship, Norse pagan, and that can have a number of different looks. We've talked about this. We've interviewed experts on the show, but it's just inaccurate and ridiculous at this late stage. I mean, like, for instance, we talked about alibis. Here's a quote. Quote, Brad Holder, one of the third-party suspects involved in Odinism, had direct link to one of the victims. His son dated one of the victims. Holder also lived near Delphi, end quote. Is there another fact about Brad Holder, Kevin, that they kind of conveniently leave out here?
What about the fact that he had an ironclad alibi, which completely proved his innocence?
Oh, okay. It's kind of weird that they didn't mention that.
Brad Holder had nothing to do with these murders.
Like, it's just, like, it's astounding. Quote, one of the suspects in Rushville, Elvis Fields, had even confessed the crime to his sister and made incriminating statements to Trooper Kevin Murphy, end quote. Trooper Kevin Murphy, of course, being one of the people who investigated the Odinism angle for the state police. This fails to mention that Murphy actually had pretty extensive concerns with the mental health issues and credibility of Elvis Fields' family. So, kind of conveniently leaving that part out. And then this is my favorite. Quote, these were the leads that Murphy, Click, and Ferenczi were following. Pause here for a second. Murphy, I mentioned. Todd Click was the former assistant police chief of Rushville, Indiana, and Greg Ferenczi was a Terre Haute police officer with the FBI counterterrorism task force, as was Murphy. They were both part of that task force. Greg Ferenczi was tragically murdered. But these three guys were looking into the Odinism for a time. They were looking into that angle. And they got on this kind of theory of, like, there's some kind of connection between Rushville and the Delphi area, and it's all very complicated and, frankly, not supported by the evidence. But so, quote, these are the leads that Murphy, Click, and Ferenczi were following. It was among the vast amount of evidence they uncovered that led them to believe that third-party suspects involved in Odinism, and therefore also involved with runes, had killed the girls, end quote. So, these guys assembled evidence so vast and so insurmountable that they never got probable cause at all, and were never able to link suspects to the crime scene, which both Murphy and Click testified to on the stand. So who cares? I like that's great that they looked at that. Okay, they seem to all get emotionally invested in doing that, and I understand that. Everyone's human, law enforcement's human, but at the same time, that doesn't, just because they did a lot of work and it never went anywhere, doesn't mean that we need to take this super seriously. Yeah.
No, I promise, Anya, I promise you, I promise the dear listener, I won't do this too often. I'm going to do it at least one more time.
Oh,
but I don't want to be repetitive about pointing out Baldwin's repetitiveness.
I think you already have been, but I love it. It's meta.
I'm going to do it at least one more time after this. But on page 7, in this document that I again remind you, Baldwin says he spent months perfecting like a jeweler. On page 7 of this document, he mentions not once, not twice, but 3 times that one of the alleged Odinists lives 125 miles away from one of the others. That is being repetitive.
Just a little bit. It's also super important details.
Now, Ian, this next part is going to upset you, but Again, he brings up Jeff Turco. I know that's a remind us, who is this? What's this Jeff Turco angle to this?
Jeffrey Turco is a professor at Purdue University in Indiana. He has an expertise in Old Norse, German. So this, in other words, is a man who can presumably recognize and read runes in ancient Norse.
So when it became a question, are these Styx runes? One of the things police did was they went to this Purdue professor, Turco, and said, what do you think?
Yeah.
And then what happened?
Well, I mean, and then he said, I don't know. Where do you want to go from here? I don't even know what happened. I mean, so this guy, he has the expertise. They go to him. I want to make it clear the context of this. They're going to him pretty early on in the investigation. And this is a time where, if you read our book, I think it gets into this pretty effectively. Like, it's chaos. It's total chaos. Everyone's running around and doing stuff. And what they're trying to do is like focus on the best leads, right?
Right.
And so if someone, if you go to somebody and they say, okay, those are not Norse runes, then okay, then we solved that mystery. So, there's a brief interaction between Turco and law enforcement where he's asked to kind of look at the shape of the sticks, and what he says ends up making them think, okay, there's not really anything there. Police have to be going where the evidence is. They can't just be hoping or kind of stretching things to make it fit because they want it to be runes, because that's how you get wrongful convictions. When you get blinders on, when you just say, no, it has to be that, I'm just going to keep shopping for experts until I find someone to tell me what I want to hear, then that's not a real investigation. So from there, the Turco thing becomes just this obsession during the pretrial phase. And for Baldwin and for the defense team, it becomes this thing that they will not let go. And they think it's a big aha moment.
They think they're not telling us.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so what happens is on August 10th, 2023, Lieutenant Jerry Holman of the state police is deposed by the defense. And they, there's a conversation, and he essentially says that law enforcement became less interested in the possibility of a Norse pagan connection after hearing from a Purdue professor who told them, hey, I don't think these are runes. And the defense asked, okay, who is the Purdue professor? And nobody remembered immediately. Ultimately, they gave the name. But it was a situation where... Took a few weeks. But they did not immediately know. Holman did not directly talk to this Purdue professor, so he was not aware of the name. And they had to do some digging to figure out, okay, who has the name? Who talked to him? Let's get this information to them. But, when you're asked in a deposition, hey, who's this guy? You're not going to just make up a name to make people happy. You're going to say, I'm going to go look into it and get back to you. So that's what happened. From that, I think most people would look at that and say, okay, well, it's annoying to wait a few weeks, but it was obviously not very important to them. So I think that's pretty understandable.
Yeah.
Or, maybe if you're a defense attorney and you kind of want to get your digs in, you kind of complain about it in some filings, whatever. These guys spun a whole conspiracy theory out of it. Like, to an extent that boggles my mind.
Because they're keeping him from us because he has like explosive information. They get his name, and we're jumping ahead a little bit, but what happens when he finally comes forward, when he's been publicly identified?
He said, I don't think they're runes, essentially.
And he says what Holman said, Holman's summary of what I said is more accurate than what the defense says.
Yeah, let's go into so McLeland was ultimately able to clear this up in filings, and this filing was done April 3rd, 2024, and it was the state's response to defense's third motion for Frank's hearing. And McLeland was able to bring in the report that Turco did for law enforcement in 2017, in like March 2017, shortly after the murders. This is what Turco wrote. It is not self-evident that these markings are runic inscriptions, nor it is immediately clear what they would mean if they were. However, the argument that these markings constitute an inscription inspired by Norse runes or modern recreations thereof is quite plausible. The following are conjectures based on the working assumptions that these lines do in fact constitute a runic or runically inspired inscription, end quote. Okay, so what does that mean? It means that he's saying, let's take it as a given that they're at least inspired by runes.
Right. is a working assumption.
He's starting with the intellectual exercise of, okay, it doesn't look like runes. It's not self-evident. It's not clear that what this would even spell out. But let's just assume that they are, and then let's go from there. So he's saying, he's trying to give these people, he's trying to give detectives something to work with. So he's trying to say, okay, let's just erase the fact that it doesn't look like runes, and it's not apparent that they are even inspired by runes. Let's assume that they are. That's all. I mean, there's nothing that he's not concluding that they're runes, clearly. Like any adult with a functioning critical thinking ability can read this and understand that. So, but of course this is the Delphi defense team. So anyways, we go from there, and this is what McLeland revealed in that filing was that March 21st, 2024, Turco is deposed, and he says then under oath that Lieutenant Holman's report on what he told him when being re-interviewed was more accurate about his beliefs on the runes than what the defense concluded that he must be, saying that they are runes. What the defense did when they read this thing was they said they focused a lot on the quite plausible of it all, the markings constitute an inscription inspired by Norse runes. They ignore the fact that he's saying we're going to take that as a given, that it's runes. So they made it out to be like, oh, they were hiding the fact a professor said it was runes when it wasn't that at all. And at this deposition, Turco was essentially able to tell them, hey, I don't agree with you.
So again, to boil it down, there's this mysterious Purdue professor. The defense says he supports us and our theories. That Purdue professor is named, and he says, no, what the defense says is not what I support. I support what Holman said. That's what you need to know, right?
Yeah, this is from that 2024 filing. Quote, the professor went on to debunk all the statements that the defense put in their motion, including that this was a ritualistic sacrificial killing. He stated that nowhere in the recorded history of Odinism has a sacrificial killing of children occurred, and if by some slight chance that it is that, it would be the only one in recorded history and goes against the definition of ritual, since a ritual is something that is done over and over again. End quote. Pretty devastating.
This professor blew a hole through their theory.
Yeah.
That's what you need to know.
And he also said they basically lied about what he said.
Right. So put a pin in that, and we're going to go, and I'm going to read something from Baldwin's complaint, and he's talking about the initial deposition when he's talking to Holman, and Holman cannot remember the name of the professor off the top of his head. And this passage I'm reading, it's actually... I'm reading like a paragraph from one page, and then I'm jumping to another page. It's like a page or so later, and I'll explain why in a moment. But here, I'm going to read it. Quote, Lieutenant Holman claimed he could not remember the name of this professor. Professor McLeland, pardon me, Freudian slip. Again, Lieutenant Holman claimed he could not remember the name of this professor. Prosecutor McLeland also claimed that he did not know the name of the Purdue professor. Both McLeland and Holman claimed that they would try to find the name of the Purdue professor and turn it over to the defense. The defense at the time thought at most it would take just a few minutes, maybe an hour or two, to determine the name of the Purdue professor, making a few phone calls, maybe call Sergeant Steve Buckley, who worked with the professor, maybe look in the evidence bank on a computer, maybe call Purdue. It should be very easy to quickly solve the mystery of the Purdue professor's identity. That is a big, gigantic deal. Huge. During the weeks following the early August 2023 depositions, in which the importance of a Purdue professor's opinion became known, I asked myself this question. How could McLeland and or law enforcement not quickly locate this professor by looking at the reports and records the professor generated? Or by talking to law enforcement who were involved in that aspect of the investigation, Steve Buckley. Or by simply picking up a phone and calling Purdue University and asking which professor might have been utilized in trying to analyze certain symbols. It was absurd to think that Indiana State Police, a law enforcement agency, with all the investigative tools and records, reports and resources available to them, could not quickly or even immediately locate the identity of this professor. So... I quote those passages from two different pages for a couple of reasons. Because again, I think this might be the last time I do it, but it highlights how Baldwin padded this thing out with a lot of needless and frankly sloppy repetition. Because in those two, he's basically listing the exact same steps he thinks they should have taken to find the identity of the professor. The exact same thing he's saying basically twice in just a couple of pages.
But it's also like, they got it. I mean, again, like this all seems like a petty overreaction to feeling like they took too long to get back to him.
They got the name a couple of weeks later. And also, if it was truly as easy as he said it was, if all you have to do is just call up Purdue and get the names of some of these professors, I remind all of us, Baldwin had a team of taxpayer-funded investigators. Had at least a couple of them, didn't he?
Yeah.
Is there a reason why, if it was so easy, they did not make those calls?
Yeah, like if it, who cares? Like
things like that, Anya, make me suspect that perhaps Baldwin's investigators were not top flight.
Oh, wow. God, that's going out on a limb.
Anya, why don't you give me a break and read this next paragraph from Baldwin that I've highlighted?
Sure. Quote, I begin to think that something more sinister might be happening. Perhaps Lieutenant Holman and the other law enforcement officers who testified under oath during depositions the week of August 6, 2023, were trying to hide the fact that Lieutenant Holman had lied in his sworn deposition testimony. Perhaps what the Purdue professor actually said was that the symbols left behind were runes, or at least could be runes, thus supporting the possibility that certain third-party suspects with ties to Norse paganism, like Brad Holder and Patrick Westfall, had committed the murders. What if Lieutenant Holman had lied under oath at the deposition about the claims of the Purdue professor to get the defense off that scent, and McLeland knowingly allowed it to happen? What if the reason the prosecutor was not providing the name of the professor and absurdly stating that he may never be able to identify the professor was that he, McLeland, was trying to cover for Lieutenant Holman and the others, and more importantly, was trying to divert the defense away from the third-party suspects who practice Odinism?
Now, I wanted to highlight that passage because it's an example of a certain technique some people use. If you don't have any actual evidence to back up the wild assertions you want to make, then what you do is you try to plant the ideas you want people to have in the form of questions and speculation. So that lets you plant a particular framing in people's mind. And if anyone calls you on it, you can just say, oh, I was just asking questions. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm charged with, say, serial theft, and I start just asking questions and encouraging others to do the same, like let's say, I'm just asking if police may have planted the cereal in my house. Don't police have a history of eating cereal themselves? Maybe one of the officers involved in my case, maybe his wife posted a picture of their breakfast that included cereal. Could she be part of Big Cereal and they're covering up for her? If we did a search of the homes of those officers who arrested me, would we find cereal on the shelves of their cupboards? Maybe the same exact brands I'm accused of stealing? Doesn't that imply that some of them could be the cereal thief and framing me?
And if Anya did that, I think we'd all be justified in suspecting that she was trying to deflect some blame and evade the consequences of her own pathetic actions.
And you'd be right. I mean, seriously, it's something that people do when they don't have evidence for what they're saying, and it's meant to trick rubes. But I mean, he's filing this to the Disciplinary Commission. I mean, these are attorneys; they know. I think most attorneys have a rhetorical nonsense detector.
Yeah, there's a show on television, Penn and Teller Fool Us, I think is what it's called, or something like that, where magicians come on and they perform tricks in front of Penn and Teller. And most of us average lay people see these tricks and say, wow, that's really impressive. But Penn and Teller say, I know how you did that. And so when Baldwin tries to use some of these rhetorical tricks in front of a group of lawyers on the disciplinary committee, they know what he's doing.
He seems to think that he's smarter than other people. And it's like when you're talking to YouTubers, you're probably right. But when you're talking to peers who are also attorneys who are tasked with disciplining other attorneys, I think, like this kind of stuff is not very effective. And it just looks bad, I think.
And with all that said, let's answer some of the questions Baldwin was asking there.
Yes.
No, Lieutenant Holman did not lie under oath. No one hid the name of the professor. and no one was interested in diverting the defense from the preposterous Odinism theory.
Yeah. In 2017, let's just be clear again, Turco said, quote, "It is not self-evident that these markings are runic inscriptions, nor is it immediately clear what they would mean if they were." Again, he's an academic. He's assuming that they're Norse-inspired. He says that in the friggin' report. And the defense basically chopped this up and garbled it so that it would fit what they wanted it to fit. And it is fully believable to me that Lieutenant Holman and others like McLeland would not remember this one professor's name because it was a bad lead that went nowhere and other things were happening at the time that were likely more promising. So having one conversation where it's like, oh no, that doesn't look like runes to me, that's not exactly going to be the big highlight of your memory from March of 2017. You know, and it's believable to me that it took some digging to figure out who talked to whom. I mean, like, I'm sure if they'd just fired back, I think it was this guy, and they'd gotten the wrong name, then they would have freaked out about that. I mean, they're trying to, like, figure out who it is so they can get that information to them accurately. It seems like Baldwin got ticked off that they didn't treat him with kid gloves, and it took a while for them to get back to him. But, like, again, why didn't he call around himself? It was that friggin' timely.
And then now I want to do a brief glimpse behind the murder sheet curtain. We both prepared notes for this, and in this next section, Anya prepared the notes, and she's going to be making a point about some of the language Baldwin used in this document. And to do this, she like cut and paste several different lines from different parts of the document, and it looks like some sort of jazz beat poem. What you've done here. I'm going to read.
I'm an artist.
This what Anya has done here. This is all from the document, but it's not consecutive. These are like from different parts of the document.
It does look like a poem.
But this is what Anya has prepared here. This is all Andrew Baldwin. This struck me as very, very, very bizarre and troubling. That is a big, gigantic deal. Huge. Professor Jeffrey Turco told a very nervous Jerry Holman. Perhaps the missing Purdue professor himself might come forward and say, "Hey, I'm here. This is a gigantic deal." Let me repeat that. I'm sorry, I just don't believe McLeland, which is crazy to me. To find the truth. Having early interviews recorded over would be huge news among law enforcement and the prosecutor in 2017. I mean, huge. Once again, nothing to see here. Undated report. Nothing to see here. Missing evidence that the defense have been seeking for many months. Nothing to see here. Just move on. All of it is shady and not normal. So
we got to snap for Kevin. His performance.
I don't mean to jump on your point. What point were you wanting to make with all
this
that?
This is not written by a professional. I mean, does not read like it's been written by a professional. It reads like either a silly preteen attempting to write what they think is a legal document, or like, you know, your really angry uncle ranting on Facebook. It just, beyond the overt manipulations that we've talked about and the level of editorializing and the sort of lack of respect for basic facts of what actually happened, there's just this bizarre tone of like petulance and like almost like this kind of language would be totally fine if he were just ranting to friends about something that happened. But like in a complaint about a legal matter, it's just really surprising to see like the casualness. I think it's meant to be disarming. I think it's meant to be charismatic and get people on his side and sort of charm them. But it just comes across to me as really manipulative and stupid. But that's just me.
What it reminds me of a little bit is there's songs you might like, and if you hear this song, you might all think that this is a fun song. But then if you read the lyrics without the music, the lyrics just sound stupid. And I think if Baldwin was like saying this stuff in front of a jury in that context, maybe it'd have more power. I don't know. But in this context, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work at all. It made me embarrassed for him reading this, honestly. I got bad secondhand embarrassment reading this.
So Baldwin goes on, of course.
Of course. We're what, like 2 pages in?
Baldwin goes on, and he says something quite bizarre, even for him. Now, he spends about a page discussing his Frank's memorandum, and that, of course, is the document he prepared that outlined their Odinism theory, which again is their contention for that for the first time in recorded history, a group of modern white supremacists murdered 2 white girls as part of a ritual. Baldwin points out that in this document, he talked about the fact that at the time, they had not yet been given the name of Turco, the Purdue professor. But then Baldwin says after the document came out, lo and behold, and he misspelled lo, they were given Turco's name. Now, I'm going to read exactly what he wrote in his document here. Quote, if the defense had never filed the Franks memo calling out the prosecution for its absurd claim that law enforcement could not figure out the name of the professor, the defense may never have learned the name of the professor. End quote. So wait a minute. Let's stop. I'm pushing pause. Let's think about what he just said there. He says the reason we all learned Turco's name was because he cannily brought up the issue of the professor not yet being identified in the Franks memo.
Oh, my God.
But remember what we just told you. After Turco was identified, he came forward and said the defense's interpretation of his words was wrong, which was a huge problem for their theory. So when he comes out and he's identified, he says the defense was wrong and Holman was right. He blew a huge hole in the defense theory. And if we accept Baldwin's interpretation, the one and only reason that Turco got the opportunity to blow that hole through their theory, the only reason he was identified was because of Baldwin's brilliant decision to raise the issue in the Franks memo. What a strategic masterstroke by the learned attorney. If there is an alternate universe where he is a prosecutor and I ever get charged with a serious crime, I would hope and pray that he's my prosecutor because I would surely be acquitted.
It's like watching.
Does he not think what he says?
He doesn't. It's like watching Edward Smith, Captain Edward Smith, in the water, watching the Titanic sink, rubbing his hands and being like, all according to plan. Like, why are you bragging about doing something that blew up your whole defense? But this is what they do. There's no connective tissue between anything. Everything is its own weird compartmentalized battle that they don't really seem to realize affects the whole tapestry of their defense. And that's been a consistent problem for this team.
But with all of that said, I don't want to leave his assertions unanswered. I want to be clear. I believe Turco would have been identified and his name given to the defense, even if Baldwin had not mentioned him in the Franks motion.
It's sort of like, I don't know. It's like if I open my front door and it starts snowing shortly afterwards, did the snow come because I opened my front door? Or am I kind of maybe associating two events together that aren't really connected? Feels like they do that a lot. Baldwin does that a lot.
He does that a lot.
A lot of logical lapses, a lot of logical fallacies, a lot of lack of logic. And it's like, why would the prosecution care? Because Turco was completely backing them up. So, like, why would, just if you look at it, the prosecution's not corrupt, law enforcement's not corrupt, but even if they were, like, Turco is devastating to the defense.
Devastating.
So the idea that they would hide that, no, we don't want anyone to know that the defense is just completely, enamored with a theory that doesn't make any sense and isn't accurate. Like, it just doesn't make any sense from any sort of logical standpoint, and it's embarrassing.
So then Baldwin in this complaint, he then talks about some of the issues we've talked about, where he claims that Jerry Holman lied during the deposition and gave an inaccurate summary of what Turco said. Again, Turco said, no, what Holman said is accurate. That's a fair summary of what I said. And then Baldwin says something else remarkable on you, and I'm going to quote it.
Yay.
Baldwin writes, had the defense simply believed Holman's statement as being true, as well as the statements of other law enforcement officers' testimony from that August 6, 2023 week of depositions, the defense might have abandoned pursuing the Odinism theory, end quote. Does anyone out there have any doubt at all that this defense team should indeed have abandoned their hapless Odinism theory. It was ridiculous. It was nonsense. It was easily debunked. And it did their client, Richard Allen, far more harm than good.
There's something so sweaty and defensive about all of this. Like, oh, it's good that we did the Franks memorandum, even though it kind of like blew things up. It's good that we did Odinism. Like that, of course, was the theory. Of course, we would do Odinism. We would do it again in a heartbeat. And it's like your friend takes you to a restaurant where the service is terrible. They're an hour late with your food. It's all cold. You get food poisoning and you get robbed at gunpoint in the restaurant. And it's like, oh, wasn't that the best restaurant ever? It's like, no, it wasn't. We were all there. It was terrible. Like, why are we it's like if I say it enough, if I put that into the universe enough, and if I tell all my colleagues and I tell all my friends and I tell the disciplinary commission about how great Odinism was, maybe that'll make it true. And it's like, no. Like the blue fairy is not going to come wave a wand over this, disaster garbage fire of a theory and make it any good or any way intellectually honest or coherent. Everyone who has a brain thinks it's stupid. But anyways.
Baldwin goes on. I mean, this is, again, 57 pages. He renews some of his old complaints about what he unfortunately calls evidence dumps.
Yeah, and again, it's like this immaturity of that. Like, this is a professional. This is a man who went to law school. Every time he can choose some kind of petulant or stupid or childish way of saying that, for some reason he opts for that rather than trying to at least sound a bit professional in this process.
And these evidence dumps, that was his term for there was an enormous amount of work done on this investigation over the years, and McLeland would provide huge amounts of evidence to the defense team. But apparently the defense didn't have the wherewithal to go through and organize it themselves. And they often complain, why doesn't McLeland organize this for us? Why doesn't he help us find things we want to find? You want to take it up from there? I think you had something to say.
One of the most striking moments about this for me, because there were all these complaints from the defense about discovery issues. And listen, discovery issues are something to take seriously. I think we said at the top, if you hide discovery, if a prosecutor hides discovery and hides exculpatory evidence, a case can get thrown out over that. It's very serious. It's violating somebody's rights. So you got to make sure discovery is done right. But with this, I can't even make this up. I remember this so vividly. And I was listening to our old episodes. So I was like, I know this happened. I know I didn't fever dream this, but I was able to lock down the exact date of this. So the 3-day hearings, the first one of those occurred in 2024, summer of 2024. And they saw that the defense team, Auger, Rozzi, and Baldwin, arguing to Judge Gull why their third-party Odinism theory should be allowed at trial. Ultimately, Judge Gull ruled that it should not be allowed at trial because there was no nexus and you need to have some kind of link between your suspects and the crime, and they didn't have that. So, first day, July 30th, 2024, Auger is going up and saying, what the defense is arguing is that the McLeland has been withholding discovery from them, and they're not getting discovery, and they're not getting specific stuff that they wanted. And Auger is up there and she's going on about how, we're not asking the prosecution to do our jobs for us. We're doing and McLeland's like, you are asking us to do your jobs for us. And, basically what the defense is doing is ordering us to find stuff for them because they can't find it. And that, and basically what he said is they're trying to get around not being able to beat the burden for introducing third-party suspects. So what they did was they'd file a request for sanctions on the prosecution. And I don't know if you remember this, but one of the sanctions was, just let us do Odinism, please.
I remember that.
And you're not allowed to say anything bad about it.
I remember that.
I forgot that. And it's because you hid all this evidence and you didn't give us all this evidence. So we take a lunch break. For some reason, I didn't go to lunch. I just sit around the I don't know what you call it, kind of balcony area in the center of the courthouse. And I'm just staring into space. I think at the time I said I was questioning my life choices about why am I here? And then I look down and McLeland's running down the stairs. And I was like, okay, what's going on there? I don't know. We go back in and McLeland gets up and he says that he and Detective David Vito were looking at some of the defense complaints. And he provided receipts on those specific pieces of discovery had been turned over. Not only had they been turned over, but people on the defense team had signed for them. And Jennifer Auger said, quote, "It was very kind McLeland to find that proof." It was like surreal because it was like all this caterwauling and yelling about, oh, we're being hidden from it. Oh, we didn't get this. And you need to let us do Odinism, please. And don't say anything bad about it. It's very good. And like they were able to just be like, we turned that all over to you. They had a history of claiming things that were simply not true. And it was like it really showed to me that they did not have a handle on this case as attorneys. I don't feel like, listen, I sympathize with them to the extent that it was a tremendous amount of discovery to go through. It's a tremendous amount of data. But it seemed like they put so much energy into basically cultivating things in the court of public opinion that they didn't actually have a handle on the important information that they had in their case. And it showed in their performance.
It did.
And it's like, I just stuff like that underscored that I don't believe a word any of them say about discovery issues. I think that McLeland did things properly, and he probably went further than he had to in helping them organize things to a certain extent. And, instead of being, remotely grateful, they turn around and try to basically act like he was doing things he shouldn't have been, which is not backed up by the evidence.
Yeah, I don't know about you. We're like halfway into this thing. We haven't even gotten to Todd Click.
Oh, my God.
We haven't gotten to Ricky Davis. Yes, he brings that up. He brings up Ricky Davis, folks. We haven't gotten to the complaints against me. I don't know about you. I really need a drink. And by a drink, I mean a Mr. Pibb.
Fair.
So why don't we take a break, come back, and do part 2 in a few minutes.
Let's do it.
So stay tuned. We'll also be dropping part 2 today.
Yes.
Thanks so much for listening to The Murder Sheet. If you have a tip concerning one of the cases we cover, please email us at murdersheet@gmail.com. If you have actionable information about an unsolved crime, please report it to the appropriate authorities.
If you're interested in joining our Patreon, that's available at www.patreon.com/murdersheet. If you want to tip us a bit of money for records requests, you can do so at www.buymeacoffee.com/murdersheet. We very much appreciate any support.
Special thanks to Kevin Tyler Greenlee, who composed the music for The Murder Sheet, and who you can find on the web at kevintg.com.
If you're looking to talk with other listeners about a case we've covered, you can join the Murder Sheet discussion group on Facebook. We mostly focus our time on research and reporting, so we're not on social media much. We do try to check our email account, but we ask for patience as we often receive a lot of messages. Thanks again for listening.
When you manage procurement for multiple facilities, every order matters. But when it's for a hospital system, they matter even more. Grainger gets it and knows there's no time for managing multiple suppliers and no room for shipping delays. That's why Grainger offers millions of products in fast, dependable delivery, so you can keep your facility stocked, safe, and running smoothly. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
If you work in university maintenance, Grainger considers you an MVP because your playbook ensures your arena is always ready for tip-off. And Grainger is your trusted partner, offering the products you need all in one place, from HVAC and plumbing supplies to lighting and more. And all delivered with plenty of time left on the clock, so your team always gets the win. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, visit Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.